we go. Welcome to the newest edition of Deals and Deadlines. We are your sports business podcast. That's Hadley Engelhardt. He's an agent and been one for a very long time. He's also our sports business insider. I'm Matt. Thanks so much for joining us. I will remind you guys we have new episodes that drop each and every Friday on all podcast platforms, and you can watch this show on our 680 The Fan YouTube channel. All right, Hadley, we have a college football playoff to dig into, but I want to talk to you about the business angle of it. So the playoff bracket is set. Each selected team receives $4 million for making the playoff. So right now the breakdown looks like this per conference. 5 SEC teams made it, meaning $20 million go to the pool. 3 Big Ten teams, $12 million. 1 Big 12 team, $4 million. 1 ACC, 1 American, 1 Sun Belt. So as much as these teams love the bragging rights of getting conference, domination and more teams in, it means bottom line dollars.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is a home run hit for the SEC. Big money, and even for the smaller schools. You take a Tulane or James Madison, some of this money, this revenue, even in the first round, is equivalent, if not more than, some of the G5's entire total media budget. So this is a big deal for the smaller schools. Obviously, the big schools, it matters. It adds to their wealth, and it's distributed amongst all the SEC teams, and it's broken down based upon who appears in it. They get the lion's share of it. But every school that is part of the SEC benefits from the wealth of the SEC and the Big Ten as well. But, it's great to see these smaller schools generate this type of money. And again, this money keeps increasing if they continue to play throughout the playoffs.
Well, this is where the conversation needs to happen on the 12-team playoff becoming a larger playoff. It's not about what we need. We don't need it. We have to get that out of our mind. We don't need more teams. You want more teams if you're trying to create more revenue, more money for the teams, and thus for the sport. So if we do expand to 14 or 16 teams, you'll kind of understand what that's going to look like. In this year where we have 2 G5s, you're a team like Notre Dame, who's a cash cow and brings eyes to the table. Vanderbilt, who's got a Heisman Trophy candidate. You are leaving some meat on the bone by not having a couple of those teams in the playoff.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, they've got to pick the best teams. And obviously the big controversy going into this was, does Notre Dame get in or not? And, they're not part of a conference. And so it's always that part of the debate whether a school like Notre Dame gets in. And, the ongoing debate has been, the Tuesday prior to the selection, they were ranked above Miami.
For 5 straight weeks.
Yeah, correct. And now, 4 or 5 days later, with no games being played, Miami jumps them. So I get the discussion, the argument, but, it was head-to-head. Miami beat them fair and square, and we can look at strength of schedule and records against other opponents. But they made a decision, and obviously there was some trickle-down effect, which I'm sure we'll discuss about what's going on with Notre Dame. But the revenue's there, the eyes will be there. I think it's exciting that you have the Tulanes of the world and the JMUs of the world, and probably more the Tulane. I think the Tulane-Ole Miss matchup's going to be great.
Can I stop you though? I want to pick through, because you're a lawyer, and so we hear about tweaks to these setups for these things like the college football playoff. I'm one who, you said we picked the best 12 teams. We didn't. We set in parameters that allows a G5 team to make it. The ACC didn't do a good enough job, so it allowed a second G5 to make it. Hadley, here's what I want to ask you. If I'm college football moving forward, I'm going to set up guardrails to say to the G5s, you're in, but you've got to fit more specific criteria. You've got to be ranked in the top 15 of the final poll. You've got to have a certain amount of wins against power competition, whatever it is, to guarantee that we don't leave out Notre Dame or Vanderbilt over little James Madison, Tulane. And I applaud you for thinking it's great. Those games will die on the vine from a rating standpoint. People will not be into them, and you're not picking your 12 best teams.
Yeah, listen, but we have that same argument. If we went to 16, we're going to have that same argument where there's 17 and 18. There's always the debate that we don't have all the best teams. And even in basketball, I know it's, you take a conference championship from the Sun Belt, they get in. Well, they may knock out an SEC team. That may not be one of the best SEC teams, obviously, but would beat that Sun Belt team every day. So we always have those debates, and that's what's great about it. But, to have the JMUs and Tulanes, I think it's good for sport. Yes, leaving Notre Dame's out big, but if we left Miami out, we'd have these same discussions. So it's never going to be a perfect scenario. Remember, people, we had 2 games not too long ago. We had 2 teams not too long ago. We went to 4, and everyone was bitching and moaning about the 4, and, we need more teams. Now we went to 12, and people are still complaining. So you're not going to satisfy everybody. Financially speaking, the network's going to do fine. I mean, they're going to have eyes on it. And I think it's, again, I think it's wonderful. In fact, I saw a very funny thing. You may have seen the same thing, a tagline for the Tulane-Ole Miss game. It said Tulane versus no lane.
It's funny, it's cute, but I'm going to come back at you. I'm a little surprised to hear you say this because I think college football and the networks are admitting what's going on in the first round of the playoffs. Here's why. Miami and Texas A&M will play noon game on ABC. Alabama, Oklahoma will play Friday night. Primetime, world can watch. The two games that I'm talking about that I think people aren't going to watch, James Madison, Oregon, is going to be played at 7:30 at night. That's going to be on TNT. Tulane, Ole Miss, 3:30 on TNT. Here's why. The NFL's got two games that day. They've got the Eagles and the Commanders at 5, Packers and Bears at 8. So what college football is doing is we're putting our two games that we know the world wants to watch at 8 o'clock on Friday, on opposed noon. Those are not good windows, Hadley. No. Typically, it would be 3:30 and 8 o'clock, and the college football world's like, all right, we're going to bury these games against the NFL on TNT. It's like, what? These are the most important games of your season. It's just, to me, it's not well thought out planning.
Yeah, and listen, those games, those time slots and those networks may have already been set. So whether a Notre Dame, Miami, or Vanderbilt was playing, those time slots, so somebody would have been in those time slots. So we would have that discussion that another game may be there. But yeah, I mean, you've got some powerhouse games. You got Packers, Dodgers, Eagles, and Commanders being played. They're being smart about it because, the NFL is the Goliath, and they know they have to put some games there. I think optically, you're correct. It looks like they're hiding those two games there. But again, if we put Notre Dame and Vanderbilt in place of those two other teams, they may still be in those time slots. So open for debate, but I'm glad to see. I love seeing a few Cinderella teams in a playoff format, and I think it's great for the sport. Listen, I tell Notre Dame this all the time, and people that I deal with up there, join a conference. It takes the debate out of everything because now you're head-to-head with all these teams, and you can make a solid debate.
Okay, so let's talk about the legal end of this. Notre Dame, among, I think, 10 or 11 total schools pulled out of bowl games. Notre Dame's one that can really hurt the revenue of the sport, can really affect the ratings that you're talking about. 2 or 3 brands in all of college football. Notre Dame's one of them that commands the eyes that it does. So ESPN has mentioned Notre Dame pulling out could affect $50 million in revenue from the bowl game that they were going to be a part of, which I guess was the Pop-Tarts Bowl, which just sounds funny to say, but they were going to be the Pop-Tarts Bowl against BYU. Tell me the legal end of that. Could ESPN prove that? Could there be litigation? Could this stop teams from doing it moving forward?
Yeah, I'm not sure of how the legality of it with the agreements with the media networks are. But optically, it's not a good look for Notre Dame, obviously, because they're now, it's kind of sour grapes, and they're saying, hey, we didn't get in, and now we're not going to play. We're going to show you. But, obviously, there's a number of other teams, about 10 teams to date, that have opted out of playing in bowl games. And listen, for Notre Dame, it's probably more about, hey, we're not playing for a championship. We've got high draft choices. It's more about player safety. Some of these other schools that had losing records that opted out, what ends up happening is because they weren't making the playoffs prior to Thanksgiving, they've already made plans. The kids have already made plans. They've already left campus. So they've already shut down their program. So those programs can now, they may have said, hey, can you all come back? Or, hey, you know what? I'm going on vacation. This guy's going here. Plus, they're dealing with the portal, too. So there's a lot of business going on. Is it really worth it financially for the school? Because the school has to pay for their team to get there. It's a big expense. And if it's not going to benefit them in recruiting, and there's always that injury factor. People have to remember that you're not playing for the trophy. Why continue to do it?
Well, these are exhibition games at that point. It makes you wonder what the long-term viability of the bowl games might be. These are great TV inventory games. ESPN largely has the bowl season. And even though they don't get huge ratings, these games do better than almost anything they would run, and it fills hours and hours of content during December. So the TV folks are going to want this. I wonder, to your point, how much longer we're going to have this influx of games now that we're going to have a playoff that continues to expand.
And by the way, and it's not good. I mean, look, one of the games, they couldn't find anybody. They're getting App State to play Georgia State.
Which just played Georgia Southern, who played last month.
Well, they just played a few weeks ago. So, who wants to see that? So they had to fill up a time slot. But I agree with you. Back in the day, obviously pre-COVID and pre-NIL and portal and the money in this business, all these bowl games meant something. At the minimum meant helping you evaluate your future talent. But you don't know if that future talent's even going to be with you because they're going to enter the portal. So there's so many different factors in play that I think these games become less and less meaningful. The big debate this weekend was Alabama losing to Georgia. Will that knock them out? Because it's a bonus game. And so it just shows you how powerful the SEC is, that if you get into the SEC championship, it looks like you're going to be in the CFP.
Okay, something you and I have talked about a lot. When would private equity make its way into college athletics? Well, the seal has been broken. We are here. In a groundbreaking move, the University of Utah Athletics is entering into a deal that could be upwards of $500 million in an equity partnership with Otro Capital, which features the creation and shared ownership for a profit entity to operate athletics, which means they're going to have a say-so in what happens with Utah Athletics. And for Utah, they're getting a big check. So what does it mean for them specifically? And do you think now this opens Pandora's box up for more?
Yeah, I mean, this is, we've talked about this several times about what does this mean with this influx of money. The interesting thing, when you have private equity, if you look at a traditional private equity investment in any type of business, they grow it, and in 7 to 10 years, they flip it and they sell it. Well, who are you selling it to other than another private equity or back to the university? So it's going to be an interesting play on how they do this. Utah, they claim, will have the lion's share, will have the majority, so they'll have final say-so. But anytime you bring money into stuff and big money, you know, you always question that. And so a school like Utah, you know, listen, to be determined, right? Is it good for the sport today? I don't know. We'll have to see if Utah and other schools follow. But it just shows you how big business college football is. And really what changed all of this was NIL. I mean, without NIL, I don't think you see private equity getting involved. They talk about facilities and they talk about coaches, but they already had all that stuff. And the alumni already paid for all these things. This really is about building winning teams. And when you have $500 million or whatever it is, it's not just about football and basketball. You can now actually build the smaller teams, the Olympic teams. You can do things to make your university that much more competitive across the board. To
your point, though, I'm going to be fascinated to see that Otro Capital is the name of this equity firm. I'm going to be curious what their ownership is going to be. How much say-so do they have? Are we getting branding on the court? Are we getting, you know, are we changing schedules? How much are they going to be involved? Because you are giving up a level of your control if you're Utah to somebody who's writing you a check, and we'll see who follows and watches it closely.
And by the way, and that will increase the marketing. I mean, they will make sure everything is branded because they have an interest now. They're on the business side of it.
They have ownership.
So when you talk about stadiums, you talk about I mean, everything you can imagine.
Think uniforms, think merch, think all of it.
Everything is going to have a brand to it, which has a price tag to it, because their goal, listen, the private equity firms want to see Utah win, obviously, because that'll bring more value, but they want a return on their investment.
Yep.
And their clients want a return on their investment. And so, and the goal is to make money, grow the brand, and then flip it. So it'll be interesting to see, especially like a school like Utah.
Yeah. All right, coming up, we'll talk about an old dude. I'm talking old, like mid-40s, finding his way back into the NFL. How does that happen? We'll get the agent's perspective on that. Plus, we'll talk about Taylor Swift. Her,
again?
I know. Is her brand being diminished by the NFL? And there's a big change coming to the World Cup. We'll dig into those topics and more next. Okay, we continue with this episode of Deals and Deadlines, your sports business podcast. I'm Matt Chernoff with Hadley Engelhardt. I'll remind you, if you're new around here, hi. Thanks for joining us. You can subscribe to our little sports business podcast, which drops new episodes each and every Friday, wherever you get your favorite pods. And you can watch us on the 680 The Fan YouTube channel. All right, Hadley, I want to pick your brain as the agent who have had older players. Maybe not mid-40s, but a story popped this week that the Colts, who are desperate for quarterbacks, Daniel Jones got hurt. Then they lost their backup, Riley Leonard, and they'd already been without Anthony Richardson. So now they've called 44-year-old Phillip Rivers. Take him out of mothballs. They bring him out. They're like, we're going to put you on the practice squad. If we need you, you're going to have to go play. Tell me what that conversation is like. How are you in contact with him? Is he staying in good shape? Is this just like a desperation thing? Have you seen anything like this?
Well, not at this age, obviously. And he has been out of football for a number of years, not a year or so. So surprising. However, if Phillip, obviously, and his agent, you know, he's been training, he's been coaching, but he may be working on his craft, and always said, hey, if there's an opportunity, that's perfect. I will stay in shape. I'll be game ready, and let me know, and so I can prepare for it. You know, listen, Phillip Rivers is 44. He's got 9 kids.
He's got like 38 kids. They don't stop having kids.
He wanted to go back to work.
I'm sure.
So it's...
What does the practice squad pay?
$18,000.
So it's not, he's rich. It's not about the
now,
money.
that's the $18,000 is on the practice squad. If they need him, they're going to elevate him, and he'll get the minimum salary, which is just over $1 million for his years of service, divided by 18. He's not doing it for the money. This contract is a very minimal contract. But I think it's something that, hey, I want to give it one more shot. They're a playoff contender. I'm in great shape, and let's see what happens. So putting him on the practice squad isn't a red flag. Like, why not the active roster? Because you have 3 free elevations. So you just do that to see if it works, and if it does, great, and you get to keep your other 53 players intact. But listen, with 9 kids, I'd be going back to work too.
I will. Not from a business standpoint, I'd be worried about his health if he gets on the field.
Yeah.
I don't care what kind of shape a 44-year-old's in. It's different than NFL shape. And let's be honest, Phillip Rivers' arm 4 years ago was barely getting the football where it needed to go. So I get they're desperate. As the agent, I wonder what kind of conversation you have of, like, they really might play you. Are you ready for the idea of getting hit again?
Yeah, and listen, they went through this. They've had these conversations. He went up there for a workout and obviously threw the ball well enough that they said, let's do it. If they weren't a playoff team, you'd find a guy from the practice squad somewhere that you maybe never heard of that they would have brought there. But they are truly a playoff team. And so they want a veteran there that can help guide them and lead them. I think they'll end up giving the rock to Jonathan Taylor much more. There'll be a lot more things going on in the running game and the short passing game, especially early on, to see if he can take these hits.
I wonder how many agents and old quarterbacks started loosening up their arms and do you think you could still play again if they call you?
I'm still waiting for the call.
Yes, I understand. Okay, so help me understand what's going on with the Taylor Swift viewership stuff, right? Everybody complained. We saw Taylor too much. She was on for 3 seconds, a stop when she was at a Chiefs game. Well, this year she's barely being shown. You and I joked about this earlier in the year, that there were times when she would do the walk-in, NBC would show her on Sunday night, or whoever the network was. At one point, there was like a big moving screen in front of her. Is this a Taylor decision? Because it can't be a league decision. Why would all of a sudden we go from seeing Taylor as much as we have to not seeing her at all?
Well, I don't think it's a Taylor decision. I think, listen, there's cameras everywhere. They can choose, in the big truck, decide there's a camera always on her, I'm sure, and they can decide to go to that at any point. Just like we have here, so that's not it. I think this is not a breakup. I think it's just a timeout. And listen, the reality of it is Kansas City's not a very good team right now. They don't look like they're going to be a Super Bowl team like they have in the past. And so I think that plays into it as well.
Do you really? This one surprises me. I don't think it has anything to do with the team. They get all the primetime games. She's there. She was just there this past week when they played on primetime. I think they showed her once.
Yeah.
And I don't, it's not a huge deal. It's just confusing to me. We went from all that where the brand is being built, young girls, big following, and now you're not showing her at all. I'll disagree with you. I think
so. You think she went to them and said, "Hey, keep me out of this"? And
I have to believe that she said, "I'm going to be there. I don't want it to focus on me as much." Hadley, I just can't figure out anything else, because maybe she's like, "This is Travis's last year potentially. Make it all about him. Make it all about him." I can't wrap myself around anything else, because the league was loving the Taylor influence.
Right. And listen, you may be right, and it may be a combination of the two. That, hey, the team's not doing as well, and it's not as relevant. So yeah, listen. We don't know. I also think part of it may be, the third part of it may be, if you recall last year, she was in deep talks about doing the Super Bowl. And so therefore they were building that momentum as well as they were going to, when they decided not to work with her for whatever reason we talked about in the past. Maybe now they're saying, all right, so she's not the focal point because she's not going to be part of our brand come Super Bowl.
She's in timeout.
Yeah, no, and that's what I mean. So they're giving some space right now. And again, the team's not doing great. So it doesn't become, people aren't talking about the Chiefs every day anymore like they were in the past. So it becomes less relevant. But I think it's a combination of what you said, what I said, and then also the fact that she's not performing at the Super Bowl. I think it's a combination of all three of those.
Okay, so we found out a lot more about the World Cup matchups. We're in Atlanta. We're going to be one of the host cities. So we started to see the pods and the way everything's going to break down for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. We've also found out that we will have breaks for the first time each half in tournament history, effectively dividing matches into quarters. They're saying to protect players. They're going to count them as water breaks, but also build them into TV timeouts the way you would get in a football game or any other kind of a game. Now, I know this is not going well around the world. One of the great things about soccer, as our friends would call it globally, football, is the fact that there are no breaks. You're playing your 90 minutes, and we're doing our 45 minutes, and if we have more time put on the clock due to an injury or whatever, that's fine. This is what it obviously would be, right? This is, let's build in an opportunity to make a ton of revenue if we're Fox in this case, but it is not going over with soccer purists very well.
Yeah. So you don't think they're doing it for the players' safety, huh?
I'm sure the water breaks are important. They care about the hydration.
I feel like it's my 3-year-old grandson taking a water break in his little 30-minute soccer clinic.
Do you think the hydration break will be sponsored by whatever water company?
There's no doubt about it. I mean, listen, let's call it what it is, right? They're going to say that it's 100 degrees in all these different markets. Meanwhile, these stadiums are beautiful. It's not 100 degrees.
You're playing inside in Atlanta?
Correct. None of that is true. This is a money-making opportunity. Welcome to United States taking FIFA and looking for the opportunity to try to make as much money as possible, more branding, just like the private equity with colleges. This is just another money-making opportunity. And, I don't think it's sounds great medically speaking that they're looking after the player's best interest and taking some of these water breaks, but you're right. There'll be a sponsorship for the water break. There'll be more commercials to show. So I think it's a benefit money and it benefits. And again, that will trickle down to the FIFA people, because the more money that, they make, the more money goes to the FIFA, executives. So I think they're saying, no, it's not the right thing. But, listen, United States has been saying it for 150 years to, move it into quarters because A, it gives a break, but B, it gives you more money-making opportunities.
Okay, I need your lawyer hat for 1 second. There's one more story in football we need to cover. Ohio University placed their head coach, Brian Smith, on leave back on December the 1st. Now, Smith's attorney says the coach was asked to leave without any explanation, which right there, red flag. He got paid leave after going 8-4, so it's not anything to do with the record of the team, but the school, again, won't say why. Smith's first day, Smith being out could avoid a $2.5 million buyout trigger if it's not related to record or if it's not related to the team performance-wise. You as the lawyer, what am I missing here? Because there's something we're not being told.
They're not assuming there's no shenanigans with regard to off-the-field stuff, and they're trying to be, give the coach a break and do the right PR thing. This is not a football decision. This is an accounting decision. And, obviously, if there's, something that they could do to protect their interest, again, it gets back. They're all making these business decisions that affects their bottom line. And so until we know the facts that there's anything going on with the coach, this doesn't look like a football decision. It looks like a true accounting. And they're trying to protect their best interest because they know that this coach at 8-4 could go elsewhere and affects them getting paid back and things like that. Because when you go to Ohio University as a coach, that's not your resting spot. That's not a Georgia, that's not an LSU or a Florida. That is a place you go to in the MAC that you look to go into the SEC or the ACC. And so those coaches and those schools really want those buyouts because that helps their budget. And so we'll see how this plays out, but it's very interesting.
All right, we'll find out more about that. Coming up, we'll talk about baseball's winter meetings. We'll talk about one of the guys in his industry who's just strutting around baseball's winter meetings, an agent being treated like a superstar. Plus, I'm offended by something that happened personally in my life that has a business angle to it. I'll share it with Hadley next. Okay, we continue with this episode of Deals and Deadlines with Hadley. I'm Matt. All right, we have a lot to cover here, Mr. Had. Baseball's winter meetings. They were going down in Orlando this week. I'm a little bummed to see that you're here with me and not peacocking your way around all the big wigs in baseball.
I had people there, and I got some, I can share some stuff that went on.
Some secondary news, which I want to talk to you about that in a minute. One of your own, Scott Boras, has become, celebrity is an understatement. He's doing poetry when he's talking to teams. He's doing rhymes. He's doing all these things. At what point, and listen, if you're the player, you get the biggest deal, you don't care. When you make it about yourself as much as the client, are we crossing a line?
Yeah, listen, Scott Boras has always done that. He is in a league of his own. In the last 3 off seasons, he's secured $1.2 billion worth of contracts. He is walking into those winter meetings like he's the owner of the hotel. And rightfully so. He's got the elite free agents. He's putting the elite deals together. And I think the players don't mind that he becomes the centerpiece of this because they're benefiting from it. And so you cross that line when it's about you only and you're not benefiting your client. In this case, the clients are benefiting from it. And the media has really made Scott Boras iconic because of these billions of dollars worth of deals that he's done and the big, the franchise players that he represents.
What's his reputation in your industry with your contemporaries?
He's cutthroat, but he does his research. I can tell you back in the day, and I've only met him on a few times, but back in the day when he would travel when he was big, but not as big as he is now, he would travel economy. He would get a hotel room and share it with people in his staff. He was not all about spending money and be highfalutin. Now, don't know if that's changed. The money in the league has changed, and the number of clients he has changed. So can't tell you what it is today, but rightfully so. He's in that position. He doesn't make it about himself, but because he has the players, it becomes about himself along with the player.
Now, you mentioned what happens behind the scenes at winter meetings. This happens in the NFL when we get people, the whole league together for different functions. There were some moves that were made. Kyle Schwarber re-signed with the Phillies. Edwin Diaz ended up with the Dodgers. There were some other moves. But Hadley, it strikes me as this is a lot of networking, a lot of rumor mongering, a lot of agents trying to draw up interest in their player. I saw where Scott Boras, speaking of him, he mentioned about Hassan Kim, who was the Braves shortstop. He just gave a very generic, a lot of teams are interested in him. Well, what else would you expect him to say? So it seems like more about that than actually getting a lot of deals done.
Yeah, well, first of all, you only have a handful of these high-profile players, high free agent players, like Schwarber and Diaz. So the majority of the meeting, listen, the main part of it is seeing everybody. We all live in different parts of the country, no matter what sport it is in the agent community. And when you have a winter meeting or the combine in the NFL, you have an opportunity to get with everybody, break bread, see people, and then you talk business. And yes, most of the work, the hardest work, is when you have guys that are on the fringe or guys don't have a home. And when you say something like, yes, there's a lot of interest, if I got $1 for every time I said that, I'd be retired.
Wouldn't it be funny if you went the other way and went, the phone's not ringing?
Yeah, right. What are you going to say? That Kim has, we haven't gotten one phone call yet, and are you interested? And that gives you, leverage to get more money. So we all say that kind of stuff. And, that's where the lion's share of work goes, is networking and trying to find what kind of interest teams have in your player. Sometimes it's not even about money right now. It's just about interest. And then once the interest is sincere, then you start talking turkey, and then if there's another team, well, that gives you the leverage. You need at least two teams to have the leverage. Now, you can play the poker game and bluff and try to get more money, but if you lose out, the player loses out, but also you lose your credibility with that other team because you say, hey, we're offered X million more, and that doesn't even happen. So you got to be very careful. That's a fine line.
What do you think that the potential lockout after the CBA expires after this next season, how do you think that's affecting, if at all, contracts? Maybe not for the big player, right? Kyle Schwarber is going to get his. We mentioned Edwin Diaz. But how much is that affecting players, teams, and how they're going about structuring deals and negotiations now?
I can tell you firsthand because I spoke to people, that were down there, and it is affecting those mid to lower tier because they're going to do shorter term deals. Because, listen, they would love a long-term deal, but the league is concerned about the lockout, and so they want to make sure they're protected, and so they're going to do shorter term deals so they have less liability. Let's see how the lockout plays out. Let's see how the new CBA is written, what kind of money, et cetera, and then decisions will be made. So when you're talking about lower tier players, the difference that will be is you'll see less of a commitment. Good players will still go to these teams because they want to win in 26, but the reality of it is they're not going to commit to these long-term deals unless you're a star because of the uncertainty of the CBA language.
One more note on baseball. ESPN announced their 2026 Major League Baseball TV schedule. It's a 30-game package that will replace what was traditionally Sunday Night Baseball. Remember, Sunday night games now will be on NBC and Peacock. And Hadley, this is going to be so interesting to watch because we talked about TV deals fracturing and these leagues admitting, while we don't love it, we're okay with it because it means more dollars. You're going to have to search a little bit more, probably not going to have the same amount of eyes on our games, which could affect the next TV deal. But in the short term, we're going to take the dollars over the old school TV contract.
Yeah, listen, ESPN didn't cancel Sunday Night Baseball. Viewership did. They weren't getting eyes on there. So the reality is they had to find different ways to create interest, get younger viewership. So they're using these alternative streaming media devices and networks to showcase their games. So listen, they're in a tough situation when they don't have the viewership there, and so they had to make a strategic move, and we'll see how it plays out and if they get more eyes on it going this route.
Okay, so last thing I want to talk to you about. I grew up in the main streets of Dunwoody, Georgia, which, I mean, you had to fight for your life every night. Am I going to make it home?
Can I tell you, I have to let everyone know, it is tough.
It is rough out there. Yeah.
Really, really
Well, there
tough.
were Girl Scout troops. Sometimes it would be a hard sell on you. You want the tag-alongs, whatever. It wasn't easy. So
we're kidding, by the way.
No, I'm not. Dunwoody was rough. So I went to Dunwoody High School. So what I'm about to tell you hurts my heart.
Home of the Wildcats, right?
We still are. That somebody by the name of Ryan Seacrest apparently went there a couple of years before me. He was 2 years older.
Who?
He looks a lot older.
Who?
Anyway, Ryan Seacrest now is going to be the actual name on the new football stadium in Dunwoody. They've been for years trying to get a football stadium built. They're going to have a 3,000-seat stadium right there on the campus of Dunwoody, and it's going to be Ryan Seacrest Stadium. Did they call me? No. Did they ask me about anything? Is there a field naming rights? Press box? Nothing. So you think after this, I'm going to go back there and support them? I'm out.
Well, I will tell you this. You don't know this. I want to surprise you.
All right.
They are naming one of the urinals after you and
the Chernoff keg.
So that's what's happening. And Ryan,
that's the love I get.
Listen, Ryan was an all-state corner for 3 years in a row.
I must have missed those years. I don't think he ever got on the field.
For everyone to know, by the way, Dunwoody High School, like a lot of high schools, is going through some big renovations and had to raise some money privately to build this new football stadium and facility to keep up with other schools in their region. And in their fundraising, Ryan wrote a very big, generous check.
Must have been bigger than my check.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. That's why you have a urinal.
I'm not going to write another one.
And that's why they have a stadium after Ryan Seacrest. So
you're intimating this wasn't an honor they just bestowed on him. You think he actually bought his way into this?
I
Hadley?
do too. I think he wrote a check. And listen.
I don't want it that way.
And by the way, it is going to make national media that Ryan did it. Maybe Ryan will show up to a game. You know, who knows? They may do American Idol from the 50-yard line.
Doesn't he have to be at the grand opening or the
I'm sure he will.
I'm
sure he will.
Well, I might not be there.
In between, you know, Wheel of Fortune and his radio show and New Year's Eve.
I'm sorry. Do I not do a radio show and a podcast and another podcast? And
that's why you have a urinal named after you.
Listen, I'm out. Listen, this is American Idol. I just got voted off, and that's what happened.
They're going to lose your $5?
You don't know what I gave, but it was.
I'm talking about your entry fee into a game.
Oh, yeah. I'm not paying to get into a game now. I'm going to put my foot down. And let me be clear about this. I don't think he has enough jobs. So,
yeah. Okay, fair enough.
All right. All right, that's going to do it for us. I will remind you guys, you can subscribe to this podcast, search out Deals and Deadlines. You're listening now or you're seeing the social post. You can find new episodes each and every Friday when they drop or watch us on the 680 The Fan YouTube channel. Thank you for watching. Thanks to our guy, Andrew Groover. We'll talk to you next time on Deals and Deadlines.